Welcome to the 7 Pillar Podcast with Nick Ahmed and Mike Ahmed. We are brothers and former pro athletes who are now on mission to help athletes and coaches grow their mindset, expand their leadership, and elevate their performance.
Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The truth is that transforming your life begins with transforming your mind. This podcast is built for athletes, coaches, competitors, and leaders who refuse to settle for average, who are ready to live with purpose, build a legacy, and defy the odds. Here, we talk about what it actually takes to live and perform on a higher plane, building your foundation on God and His truth, developing elite standards and eternal perspectives, and becoming fearless in the face of adversity. Because no one hands you a life worth living. You have to build it yourself. And it starts right now.
Welcome back to the 7 Pillar Podcast. Today we've got episode 11. We're talking about a good one today, Mike. We're talking about my life as an MLB shortstop and the principles and habits and routines that led to that. So we're going to dive into the high level, walk everyone through what I did on a day-to-day basis to become an MLB shortstop and sustain that level of performance over a long period of time. And before we do that, we're going to kind of review a little bit from episode number 9, 2 episodes ago. We talked about the 5 keys to unshakable confidence, guys. 5 keys. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's super powerful. Go back and listen to that episode 9 and just jot some notes down. We can all use boosts in our confidence. We can all dive into confidence at a higher level. So go back and listen to that. One of those keys we're going to kind of touch on today and just intro into what we're talking about today is just making sure you're prepared. Going out and having high-level preparation in all areas of life and allowing that preparation to just build over time and create confidence. So for us guys, it's just so important to build the right lifestyle, the right habits, right routines, and just show up as a person every day. That's who you are. You become a person who works hard, who prepares at a high level. And as we do that, we're going to segue into my routine today of what I did on a day-to-day basis. We're going to talk about, the ins and outs of what it was like on a game day. So we're going to share some good stories and talk about that. But before we do, this is kind of funny, Mike. So I actually got this question quite a bit, and it's hilarious. So baseball players, obviously in the big leagues professionally, we play every single day. And for the casual fan or someone who doesn't really know baseball a lot, they see that schedule and they're like, hey, with you guys playing every day, do you ever have time to practice? When do you guys have practice? And, I would just laugh. And it's just funny to people who don't really have an insight. It's like, well, we practice every day. They're like, well, when? You guys have a game? It's like, yeah, we show up early and we get all of our practice and preparation in long before the game starts, long before any of the fans get there. So I got that question. I can't even count how many times from, the casual fan or someone who didn't know the game that well. But it's just funny just to know that, people see the things when the lights come on and the game starts and things are broadcast on TV. They see the Major League Stadium, the uniform, all the performance on that stage. But most people don't see what goes into it. They don't know what happens behind the scenes. They see the home runs, they see the gold gloves, they see the walk-offs, they see all that cool stuff, but they don't see what happens at 10 a.m. They don't see what happens at noon when you arrive at the ballpark at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. before the game starts at 7. So we're going to dive into that and just kind of share a lot of what I did. It doesn't mean you have to do exactly what I did, but they're just habits that I built and principles within each of them that allowed me to perform at a high level for a long time.
Yeah. Money, dude. I mean, for everybody listening, athletes, coaches, whether at high school level, college level, professional level, doesn't matter. There's so many things in here that you guys can take away, apply to your own routines, whether it's inside of baseball, outside of baseball, whether you're even a parent or whether you're just outside of sports in general, doesn't matter. The guiding principles in this episode are going to apply to whatever you do. So take them to heart, take notes. And let's buckle up. Let's dive into this, guy. So today our format's going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a little bit more of an interview style to this episode. Nick, I'm going to ask you questions, and we're going to go through your typical day as an MLB player. So essentially, we're going to walk through 8 distinct phases, Nick, that you kind of came up with. We're going to walk through the purpose and the principles and the intentionality behind each of these phases. And then I'm just going to provide some color and highlight some of the principles and most important pieces of each of those phases. We're going to talk why it's important, why you guys should start implementing at least some of this, and again, how it can apply to your lives today. All right, sound good?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
So you touched on this briefly already, but the average fan sees only a small sliver of what elite level athletes actually do on a daily basis. So they only see the 2 to 3 hours of competition. They don't actually see the 21 to 22 other hours in a day where you're not at the field, where you're not performing. So, thinking about this concept, Nick, for you, when did your preparation for the game actually start? And looking back, like, what do you think the most important part of your day actually was?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. So for me, it actually started the day before, which we'll touch on at the end, our last phase of the day. But for me, when I woke up, it was a lot of very intentional work before I went to the field. So I'd wake up, obviously brush my teeth, shower, do all that, but I'd spend time in prayer. I'd spend time reading my Bible. I'd spend time setting the tone for my day with my identity, my mindset, my faith work in the morning, the relationship with God. If I got that kind of stuff right, if I practiced my gratitude, I wrote in my gratitude journal. I did all that kind of stuff. I knew that my mind and my spirit was in a good place to be able to tackle whatever the day threw at me. So that was first and foremost. That happened whether I was at home, whether it was on the road. But when I was at home, there were a lot of other things that went into that. So, it starts with hydration and then supplementation and nutrition and making sure my physical body is fueled in the right way. And obviously, when I was at home, my wife, Amanda, my 3 kids are there. So making that time really important. And I've talked with a lot of my one-on-one clients about this lately, just the idea of the strain that gets on the relationship inside of the season. You're traveling, you're gone for a whole week or 10 days at a time. And then even when you come back home, you rarely have any off days at home. You're mostly traveling on your off days. So when you get home, you still have a game that night and you got to have the opportunity to make sure you get enough sleep, but then spend time with your family, make sure you get to the field on time to get your work done. So that window of time to really spend quality time with your family is very small. So people talk about a work-life balance all the time. I talk about a work-life presence. So wherever I was, I just wanted to be fully present, be where my feet were, and just give everything I had in that moment. So there's a lot that went into my time, before I showed up and went to the field. And these are just some of the things I focus on. I had to make sure I was fueled the right way, both mentally, physically, spiritually, with my nutrition, doing little things like getting outside in the morning. That way it gets some morning sunlight in my eyes, sets my circadian rhythm, helps me to actually sleep better that night. I love the cold tub. A cold tub for me was a way to wake up. Not that it's supernatural, but more naturally than giving myself a stimulant like caffeine that's, probably going to give me some sort of crash at the end of it. So there's a lot of things I did, and a lot of it was very intentionally planned out and just really helped. And none of it was a huge, massive step to making me better on the field, but all of these little things added up, created a mind and a body and a spirit that were ready to tackle that performance in that game that night.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, we touch on this all the time. You highlighted it. Making sure the first thing you do in the morning is something that's gonna build your identity, build you up in the beliefs and the faith that you have. Why do you think that was so central to that part of your day? And there's probably going to be guys out there too thinking, all right, well, that's great for you. I don't necessarily believe what you believe. What would you say to them, and how did that, in turn, kind of make you a better athlete on the field?
Yeah, I think any type of high level athletics, whether you're playing, you're coaching, you're leading, whatever you're doing inside of that, there's a little bit different type of pressure and lifestyle that comes with that compared to a normal person. And that's not to say that any other job, because there's crazy difficult jobs out there, law enforcement and military and teachers and, doctors, there's all kinds of very demanding and challenging jobs out there. But for an athlete that's very performance driven, the performance is out there for everyone to see. It can be very easy for your identity to get so woven in tightly with who you are in your performance, in your results, in the statistics, and what other people think about you. So it's very, very important for all athletes, whether you believe in the God of the Bible or you have a different belief system, to just really understand who you are outside your performance, to make sure you have that non-performance based identity. And then just really practice gratitude. Become a person who's grateful. Become a person who doesn't get so focused on the negative things in life, especially with a sport like baseball. You're going to fail 7 out of 10 times as a hitter. Even if you're great, you're still going to fail that many times. So learning to focus on the good things in life. Obviously, you don't want to ignore the places that you need to make the adjustments and improve and grow, but
Yeah.
just learning to fix your focus in the right places, as it can be very easy in this life to focus on all the wrong things.
Yeah, that's great, bro. So the lesson, the principle here is that elite performance starts long before the lights come on, right? Elite performance starts long before the lights come on. So as athletes, what most people see is the lights come on, you step on the field. That's the most important thing. That's your performance. Right? But in reality, and you mentioned this, we'll get to it more later, your preparation starts the day before, starts the night before, and then that carries into the first thing you do in the morning all the way through your day. So what this really is about, it's really about our third pillar, right? 7 pillar. It's really about our third pillar here is about lifestyle. It's about what you value. It's about who you are as a human being. And it's not just about the results in the field. So you guys have to be aware of and intentionally start to create or become the type of person that you want to be, the type of person that is going to perform well when the lights are on, when the spotlight is on you. So that type of focusing on changing who you are and transforming yourself as a person is going to lead to better outcomes in the long run. We'll continue to harp on this. We'll say this all the time. It's about consistency. It's about doing the little things every single day from the moment you wake up to when your head hits the pillow at night. And as we talk about this is an awesome clip from a post-game interview, probably the best player in the NBA right now. He's going to talk through consistency and what it means to him. So, with us talking through this, we got to share this, and this is really, really important.
Thanks, Chris. Shea, you got to all your spots late, and you closed it out on defense. What did it take down the stretch against these guys?
We had to be the tougher team. Late in the first quarter, second quarter, and a little bit to start the fourth, they were the tougher team. When we turned that dial, we were able to get our physicality in the game and then play to our identity. But once we did that, we were good.
47 games for you with at least 30 this season. That ties the Thunder record. How are you just so consistent, like the Tide, night in and night out?
My whole life is consistent. Everything I do, from what I eat to when I sleep, to my recovery, to my loved ones, everything's consistent. And it's a routine for me at this point.
You guys got so much toughness across the board. These guys, of course, big plays late. What did you see from your team?
Man, what a good clip right there. He's talking about identity. He's talking about team identity first and foremost. Obviously, identity is our first pillar. You got to know who you are to be able to be good at anything in life. And same thing with the team. You got to have a team identity, a team mission to be able to accomplish anything great. And obviously, the Thunder have done some amazing things the last couple of years. SGA is a phenomenal player, and I love just seeing his teammates' reaction to his answer to that second question. He says, my whole life is consistent. And, his teammates go bananas behind him in the background there. And it just speaks to the fact that, this guy's the real deal. And to be a 2-time NBA MVP, you have to be consistent. And that's absolutely non-negotiable. And for us too, if you want to be great at anything, you have to show up with consistency, with discipline, with purpose, and everything you do. So what a clip, Mike. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's just a great illustration of how the best in their game, how the best in the craft think, and what their mindset is and what they're actually trying to do. He could have said something about being on the court and what he does in just practice time, but he listed everything that he did in his life, really, that's going to make him a consistent person, right? He didn't say he's a consistent basketball player. He said he's a consistent person. And for us and our foundation, it's right. It's not about who you are as a baseball player. It's not about who you are as an athlete. It's who you are as a person. And we can, we talk about this all the time, but who you are as a person is going to flow out into your habits and everything that you do. So we want to attack the right things first. We're not just going to attack the performance. We're not going to attack the results. We're not only going to attack our skills on the field. We're going to try to become a complete and better person. So I had to share that. Super powerful. Take that to heart. Okay, so that was phase one. That was your morning routine. Let's just walk through the next part of your day after the morning routine.
Yeah, so it's the arrival to the ballpark. And even before the arrival, it's the drive to the field. So once I left home and I got in my truck and I started the drive to the field, that's kind of when the switch would flip from, home life, family time to okay, now it's time to go to work and get the mind in a good spot. So more times than not, I'd call you on my drive into the field when you were done playing and you were coaching and you had the opportunity to be my performance coach essentially. And we would just chop it up and talk through all kinds of different topics, talk through the swing, talk through failure, whatever it is, being a good teammate, being a great leader. So we talk about all kinds of different topics on those calls. I had about a 30-minute drive in every day. And, it was you, it was Pete Fatsi, who was, the Red Sox hitting coach for a while, but he was my off-season hitting guy. So we talk about the swing and video. I'd call a couple of my mentors, Brian Beltramo, Brian Hummel, some chaplains that have been influential in my life, and just make sure I was in a good spot, both mentally, spiritually, physically, before I got to the field every day. So that drive-in was really important. And then once I got to the field, I had to get there early. As a rookie, there's some amazing principles that are kind of baked into the character of, a baseball clubhouse, and the rookies, the young guys have to get there early. It's just kind of an unwritten rule. So my rookie year in 2014, I played with a guy named David Peralta, unbelievable hitter and player. We got to overlap for, I think it was 8 or 9 years in Arizona. But he knew he had to get there early. And what he did, there was an apartment complex literally right across the street from Chase Field in downtown Phoenix.
Quick break from today's episode. So here's the truth. We've done the research, and only 5.1% of elite athletes and coaches are actually training their mind on a daily basis. That is exactly why we built our 7-Pillar Mindset Training app. To join our 7-Pillar community and start training your mind, leadership, and performance today, subscribe to our one-of-a-kind training app at app.7pillar.co/memberships. You'll be joining athletes, coaches, and leaders seeking to become the best versions of themselves, both on and off the field. For 10% off your first year, use code PODCAST10 at checkout. All right, now back to today's episode.
And he decided he was going to live there. That way, he was never going to be late. He could wake up, have his breakfast, and literally walk over to the ballpark and be there in less than 10 minutes. And it was just a quick walk. He'd be in that clubhouse early. He'd get to work. So he and I would always kind of compete against each other, just see who could get there early, get to the cage first, and get our work in, and push each other in that way. And, especially on road trips too, there was kind of this kangaroo court deal where if you were a rookie and you showed up after or even at the same time as the first bus, you couldn't take the first bus. The game's changed a lot since, and, guys can jump on that bus and do all that now. But when I came up as a rookie, you weren't even allowed to be on the bus on the road. So we had to get a taxi. This was before Uber days. I'm kind of dating myself here a little bit, but before the days of Uber and Waymo, you had to get your own ride to the field. So we're in New York, we're in LA, wherever we are. You had to call a taxi, get in the yellow taxi, get to the field early before that first bus. So if you didn't, you're getting fined in kangaroo court, and your old veteran teammates are going to wear you out. So what that did was it allowed me to get to the field early. It gave me time to prepare. It gave me time to get in the video room, to study, to really learn how to get my scouting work done at a high level. It allowed me to have time for mental performance, to just be at that field early, know that I wasn't in a rush, make sure I had time to do some visualization work and things like that. And get that body prep in. As a young player, you're starting to build your routine. You're starting to understand how to take care of your body. So it's getting your food, getting good nutrition in you. It's going to the training room. It's going to the weight room. It's making sure your body's loosened up properly, activated the right way, and you're ready to actually go tackle your skill work for the day. So it was funny just getting in those yellow taxis all those years, but it taught me something. It taught me an important lesson that, I have to get there early. I have to get my work in. I have to be prepared more than the next guy. If I want to stay here and I want to play this game at a high level, it takes an elite level of commitment.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there was a reason why that was the case, right? Like, you want your rookie guys to make sure that they are getting the work in, that they understand what it takes to be, to have the results that you want playing at a very high level, right? The competition is real from within your team, within your organization, and obviously against other teams as well. So as I'm hearing you go through this, the guiding principle, the lesson here is that you have to go above and beyond what is asked of you. You have to go above and beyond. That's really what's going to create that separation from good to great. And tying this back into the Bible, we look at Matthew 5:41. So this is Jesus talking here about, and he's really talking kind of in the context of, leadership and what it means to be just a follower of Jesus and doing things the right way. So he says here in Matthew 5:41, if a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Right? And I think the key principle, the key part of this here is like, we're not doing it and we're not complaining about it. We're not doing it begrudgingly. We're doing it willingly, right? If we have the attitude of doing it willingly and we want to do it and we're happy to do it, whether in the service of other people or whether it's, serving ourselves in the long run, right? We have to go the extra mile willingly. And this, as we talk about it, like the standard is, right, show up, do your work, go home, do it again the next day. Like, that is the bare minimum. That is the standard. But what this is really talking about is, excellence is going to require willingly doing one more, right? Willingly go the extra mile. Again, whether it's serving other people or serving your interests down the line, we have to be willing to do the extra work. It's not about doing the standard. It's not about doing the bare minimum. It's about doing what it takes to be great, really, and to have excellence in every area.
Yeah. Mike, I love that you brought up that passage from Jesus there from Matthew, and just a little color and context to that. So the Jewish people were under Roman rule and authority. The Roman soldiers would basically pick on the Jewish people. They would say, hey, my gear is really heavy. You have to go carry it a mile. So it was baked into their law that they could require them to carry their heavy gear for up to a mile. And so the Jewish people are complaining. They're like, oh, woe is me. This is so terrible. This is difficult. They're going through all these excuses, and Jesus doesn't validate them and play into that victim mindset. He takes it a step further, and he gets beneath the surface, and he says, you know what? If someone asks you to do something hard and difficult, don't just do the bare minimum. Don't complain about it. I want you to do double. I want you to do more. I want you to go above and beyond what's asked of you and become excellent in all that you do. So that principle applies to us as athletes and coaches. We're going to be asked to do things that maybe sometimes we don't want to do. And we can complain about them. We can have a victim mindset, or we can say, you know what? I'm going to get there earlier. I'm going to show up and stay later. I'm going to do extra. I'm going to take one more round. I'm going to do an extra set. Once you do that, you start to build yourself into this person that can do difficult things, that pushes through sacrifice and difficulty and hardship. And you just become a person that just, full of resilience, and it can't be stopped by the things that are thrown at you.
Yeah, I really want to hit this too. This is not what this podcast is about, but as we're talking through this is so, if you guys want to be good leaders, right, this is what it's going to take. This is like an unbelievable principle that you guys can take with you. Jesus completely flips the script here. If we want to think about leadership and creating good team culture, this is what it takes. This is the example that we have to follow. And when you go the extra mile, like, what is that going to do to the people around you? What kind of effect is that going to have on the people around you? Right? You're going to have a hugely positive effect on those people. Now you're being the example to them, but you're not only doing it just to do it, you're doing it with a good attitude and the presence of like, hey man, maybe I want to do what this guy has. Like, how does this guy deal with this? Why does this guy have a good attitude, even though he's doing more, even though he's doing things that may not be fun, he's still doing it with a really good attitude. Like, I want to go with him. I want to be more like him. So this is a huge leadership principle. We'll dive more into this on a later podcast, but I did want to hit this. All right, so moving on now. This is one of my favorite parts of the day. This is the time where we get to really hone our craft. Nick, so there were at least 2 years in your career where you were recognized as the best in the world at playing shortstop. So you won 2 Gold Glove awards. And for everyone listening, Nick, you would never say this about yourself, but I'm your brother, so I get to say this. I want you guys to think about how rare and how special it is, right? You're able to say that you're the best in the world at anything. It doesn't really matter. So what I want to say is getting to this level is not an accident. What I want you now, Nick, to do is to take us in detail through what this part of your day looked like. We're going to talk about defense now, but take us through what this part of your day looked like and maybe how it would have looked a little bit different from the guys you were playing with coming up, from the guys that you played with in college, or even the guys on your team. Like, what was that separating factor for you?
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, Mike. And, for me to think back on my career and know that I was able to accomplish something like that, like becoming the best defensive shortstop in the world, like that is special. Yeah. And, coming from a small town in Western Massachusetts and not really having a context for, that example being set around us, like, it took a lot. Obviously, God blessed me with unbelievable health, talent, opportunity, people in my life, but I developed a different type of work ethic than most of the people I was around. And it started my first major league camp. Actually, I was with the Diamondbacks. I just got traded. We had this old veteran guy named John McDonald, and he's actually from Connecticut as well. Just an undersized utility player, a grinder that turned, what should have been a very brief stint in professional baseball into a 12 or 13-year big league career. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal guy. So what he did my first camp, I was a young rookie. I was 22 years old. He was the old veteran guy. I think he was 37 or 38 at the time, maybe. He literally put his arm around my neck and said, hey, you're coming with me. People do that proverbially sometimes, like, hey, come follow me type thing. He literally threw his arm around my neck and dragged me with him and said, hey, you're going to be my catch partner all spring. So I didn't have a choice. The veteran guy who's been around the block, he's like, hey, I'm throwing with you this spring. He didn't have to. He could have thrown with one of his buddies that had been on the team, one of the older guys, but he took the time to invest in me and help me develop elite work habits. Wow. What I saw out of this guy was special. This guy had intentionality. He had purpose to how he played catch every single day. Not even the ground ball work, not even the stuff on the field necessarily, but how he played catch was just different. And again, he was 37, 38 years old, and he's showing up day one of spring training and doing little things that nobody else was doing. And I was like, man, like, if this guy can do it at this age, I can do it at my age. And I started to learn from him, how he gripped the baseball, how he took the ball out of his hands, how he received the baseball when he was catching. I developed some things later in my career about that, which we'll get into in a second. But this guy, John McDonald, he really set the example for me and showed me what it was like to work at that level. So it started with catch play. The defensive work started with playing catch. And most people think playing catch is to warm your arm up. That is a part of it, but it's much deeper too. Playing catch is to warm your arm up, but it's also to learn how to get your fingers behind the baseball, consistently make the ball spin how you want it. Is learning how to have the right footwork to be able to use your legs and core to drive the baseball through your target rather than just getting it to it. Is learning how to receive the baseball, getting the hands up in the right position, getting the knees bent, making sure you catch the baseball out front with momentum to play through it. It's seeing the catch, it's seeing the transfer, it's doing all these little things and the details that add up and become like riding a bike and become that back of the hand skill where you don't have to think about it once the lights come on. So the catch play was the start of it. Then after that, we kind of got into our fundamental, our pick drill work, whether it was spring training or in season. It's kind of off to the side by the dugout. The coach is either flipping the ball to you or doing some stuff out of a machine. But I have this whole series of pick drills I did. It was routine ground ball, intermediate backhand, full backhand, ball to your forehand side, then ball on the run. And we go through just pick and stick where you're just catching with the glove. Then you go pick and replace where you start to build some footwork into it. And so that was every day. And it's kind of like hitting off a tee too. It's this basic fundamental work that you don't think you need, but every good infielder does it every single day. You look at what the Dodgers are doing over the last couple of years, and me having played there for a little while in 2024, just getting to see it up close and personal. Freddie Freeman, a multi-time Gold Glove winner, future Hall of Famer, he's out there doing his pick drills every single day before batting practice. A guy like Mookie Betts, who is a Gold Glove right fielder, maybe one of the best outfielders of all time, he decides to come in and play shortstop to help the team out. Hadn't played infield since I think he was in the minor leagues. And he's turned himself into a good defensive shortstop. And how did he do that? He did it by the work habits. He did it by focusing on these pick drills before he even stepped on the field for his fungo. So after that, I get on the field. We start our fungo work. I've got my whole routine. I start infield in. Feet aren't moving. You got to have a good fungo guy for this. But my guy in Arizona, Tony Perez-Chica, for a long time, he was able to hit the ball exactly where he wanted to. I didn't have to move my feet. I could set my angles and everything exactly how I needed. So I got the infield in work. Then I got my infield in where I'm throwing home. I made a couple throws to home plate. Then I started to back up to what we call our 3 depth. It's that kind of in between infield in and kind of double play depth. You got maybe a slower run around third, so you're just back off the cut. So I'm working my different depths as I get back to my regular depth. And once I get back to my regular depth, I had a whole routine. It was usually 5 ground balls right at me, 5 or 6 to the backhand, 3 or 4 to the forehand, and then balls in front of me, slow rollers. So what I tried to do is I tried to dominate the details and the fundamentals, and then I tried to make sure that I did every single play I could possibly be asked to make in the game in practice and do it every single day. So funny story too, we had one spring training, I forget what year it was. We had David Eckstein, World Series champion, I think World Series MVP, brought in to be like a guest instructor. And he was a shortstop, so I was a shortstop. He'd come hang out with the middle infielders. And he was watching my routine one day, and it was the same thing I just detailed and laid out. Very intentional, working on all the backhand plays, the throws on the run off the opposite foot, the jump throws, the spin plays up the middle, the barehanded play. I was working on all these different plays. And he pulls me aside after. He goes, hey, I don't like how you're working on all this stuff. Like, you got to work on the routine ground ball. You got to be able to make that play. And I just said to him very respectfully, I said, hey, I love the career that you had. You've been a great player. And he said to me too before that, he goes, those plays you're going to make, 1 or 2 times a year, you don't need to practice those. And I just respectfully said to him, I said, hey, I do work on the routine play. I actually took 25 routine ground balls before you showed up. I did my pick drills before you got out there. but then I need to practice these plays because I may actually have to do them once the game starts. And because I practice them, I actually am able to go out and execute them and make them happen 1 or 2 times a game, not 1 or 2 times a season. So the lesson in there for me was just like, hey, you got to obviously be really good at the routine play, dominate the fundamental, but then you have to take it above and beyond if you want to be great.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to tie in here, but going back to what you talked about with John McDonald and then tying it back into leadership again, what he did for you carried over for me. And then for me as a coach, that is kind of how I approach when we talk about even just throwing a program. Like that information that you learned as a 22-year-old filtered down to me, which now filtered out into all of the guys that I've worked with, right?
Crazy.
Tens of guys, maybe hundreds of guys. So that one act of faithfulness, being a really good leader, now trickles down and has this huge ballooning effect. So for you leaders, again, like that is a great example for you guys to follow. And then just tying it back into the principle here, right? You already mentioned this, but we're going to dominate the details. While the fundamentals come first, right? Like you can't only do the basic fundamental drills and expect to be great, expect to be the best at what you're doing. You have to challenge yourself. You have to put yourself into game-like situations. And this is what I do all the time with my infielders that I work with. It's like, hey, like this is the analogy I give. We have different types of plays that we have to make on the field. And I want you to be capable of making any type of play that is presented to you. So the analogy I give is, hey, like you got to figure out what tool you need for the specific play. And we're just like, as you practice different types of plays, those are different tools that you can stick in your toolbox. And if you have 1 or 2 tools in your toolbox, you may be really good at those types of plays, but there's hundreds or maybe even thousands of different types of plays that you can make on the field, and you have to prepare yourself to make all of those. So while we do want to dominate the fundamentals, right, we're also going to dominate those challenging situations that may only happen once or twice a season, but you still have to be ready for them.
Yep, that's good.
Okay. All right, so far we've touched on the first 3 phases. We've gone morning routine, we've gone showing up to the park, and then we've gone dominating the details, okay? What's going to come next in your typical game day?
Yeah, after I got all my defensive work in, hitting was usually the next thing on the schedule. Early in my career, it would look different than at the end of my career, but what I did more than anything was I hit. I got reps in. I hit off the tee. I did flips. I did BP. Hit off the machine. I had coaches that were really skilled at throwing mixed batting practice and throwing simulated at bats. And toward the end of my career, the traject machines that are the projector screen of who you're facing that night, you can kind of go set it up and take those ABs. So I got reps in. I hit. I really, really worked. I make sure my swing was in a good spot. I knew what pitches I was capable of hitting. And, I just started to build this foundation of like, okay, I can actually do this thing. So for me, especially as a guy who was not the best hitter coming out of college, in the minor leagues, I struggled for a few years. And then getting up to the big leagues, I didn't perform and hit at all really right away. So I had to work. I had to create this insatiable work ethic to try to improve myself and get better so I can not only stay in the big leagues, but become a good player up there. So, I never felt like I quite got to the place hitting wise where I really felt like I fully tapped my potential, but I was always chasing it. I was always working at it. And what it did for me was it created, there's just awareness, this ownership, this ability for me to show up every day and know that, hey, my coaches are there to help me, but I have to show up and I have to do the work. I have to become my own best coach. I have to know what the plan is for the day and come in with an absolute, great idea of what's going to help me to get better and then perform once I have those 4 ABs at night. So it was an evolution. It took a long time to really figure that out, and it was always constantly being refined.
Yeah, I want to ask you this too, because thinking about like the high school and college athlete, baseball player, they're going to have a bunch of different coaches, right? They may have their high school coach, a couple high school coaches. They may have their summer ball coach. They may have a private coach that they're working with. So there's different voices speaking to them. Obviously, as a big leaguer over the year, you've had a ton of different hitting coaches. You've had multiple coaches at the same time, right? Like, are there times where coaches were speaking different things to you, and how did you kind of navigate that? Just different coaches giving you different advice or telling you to do different things. Like how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it's really hard. So my first 4 years in the big leagues, I had 3 different sets of hitting coaches, and it just kind of was this revolving door of a new voice every year. One of those guys' name was Dave Magadan. He played in the big leagues for a long time. Really good player in his own right, coach of the Red Sox to, playoffs and I think World Series one year. We didn't necessarily see eye to eye in the mechanics of the swing, and that's fine. You're going to kind of have differences of opinion with different coaches as you go. You're not always going to agree on everything. But what I learned from him was super important. We butted heads a lot, and I wanted to kind of shut him out in certain areas and just kind of go off and do my own thing. But I had this kind of nagging thing inside of me that said, you know what, like, even though I don't agree with him on everything to do with the swing, and I see the swing a little bit differently than he did, there's still something to learn from him. And the biggest thing I learned from him was something he said to me toward the end of the second season that I was with him. He basically challenged me on the fact that I had like 3 or 4 different feels, 3 or 4 different drills. I had too many thoughts and triggers and cues in my head. And he was like, hey, you need to simplify. You need to simplify, simplify, simplify. So what he helped me do was to just take ownership and, okay, I've got all these different ideas and thoughts. I've got to figure out how to whittle them down and get this core foundation that's really simple, really basic, and allows me to show up and be really consistent every day. So for you guys out there that have those coaches, you're not going to agree with everything they say. And coaches, same thing. You're not going to agree with everything your athlete thinks. But there's opportunity to learn from each other at some point in the day, at some point in the season. You just have to keep your mind open to it.
That's so good, bro. So the takeaway here, guys, is we have to take ownership of our career, and we have to have a plan and a purpose with what we're doing. Okay. So we're going to work hard, but we want to work hard with a plan. Right? Everything you do has a purpose. The question that I like to kind of challenge my guys with is, if someone's going to ask you why you're doing what you're doing, you need to have a reason for it. You can't just look back and kind of be like, because this is just what I do, right? Like, you have to have a reason for it. Otherwise, you're not being intentional. You're not actually growing how you should. Okay. The reps are good, but we want to have a plan with how we're doing it, how we're attacking it. Yeah. Okay. All right, bro. So we went through the first 4 phases of your day. Right? That's a ton of work. That's a ton of intentionality, but we're still not even at game time at this point. So for the average fan hearing this, the person that asks you, hey, when do you even practice? Right. This is a huge perspective shift. Okay. I want to ask you this. How long do you think it took you to kind of perfect these routines? And for you, was it really just a work in progress the whole time?
Yeah, my whole career. Like, it never stopped. I never felt like it was perfect. I always felt like, there were stretches in time where I had the same routine for a long period of time, but it was a constant refinement process. And we'll get to some of that post game that we'll get into later. But, it took a long time. It took a long time to feel like, okay, I'm in a good spot. I know this, everything that I put into my schedule has a purpose and a reason for being there. It is actually helping me once the lights come on. So the last phase right there before the game start, call it our final game prep. Most games, especially at home, you have a little bit of downtime after batting practice. So you go in, you get some food, you take a shower, you change in your uniform. There's different things that I did too. I jump in the sauna if I feel like I needed to kind of loosen up and get my body in a good spot. Maybe hot tub, cold tub, a contrast, maybe get some treatment from the trainers, make sure the body is physically capable and ready to perform. And a lot of it was just this mental stuff. So you have some downtime. It's like, hey, I'm going to either waste this time or I'm going to use it for a specific purpose and reason. So toward the middle part of my career, this stuff started to get better. I started to kind of watch some like highlight type videos, some of my favorite swings, the best plays I made, just kind of put that in my subconscious for when I stepped out on the field. Started to do some mental rehearsal and visualization work. Started to write some affirmations in a journal of what type of player I was, what my identity was when I stepped onto the field. So there's a lot of really intentional mental work in there, and it doesn't have to take a long time, but it's about consistency. It's about developing the right habits that allow you to build confidence, to know who you are when you step on that field. The other part of it too was just learning how to be a great teammate and knowing that it's not just all about me. So my preparation obviously is important, but I had to take the blinders off. I had to become a great leader. I had to learn how to connect with my teammates, whether it was sitting together in the food room and having a meal with somebody, or maybe playing cards for 10 or 15 minutes when we had some downtime. But just really pouring in and investing in my teammates in that time was crucial. So the last couple things right before it was go back to the weight room, kind of reactivate, get the body primed again, throw some med balls, do some jumps, make sure my core is really fired up. And then I head back down to the cage, get a few more swings before I head out to the field to, run sprints and throw and take the field for game time.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Were you ever a ping pong guy before the game?
Yeah. We had 1 or 2 years. We had a ping pong table in the middle of the clubhouse. We ended up having to move it to a storage room right outside the clubhouse. But yeah, I mean, you and I have talked smack about ping pong on here a lot. But I was solid. Yeah, I played a little bit of ping pong in the clubhouse. We had one guy who absolutely dominated that year or 2 years. Bronson Arroyo played for a long time, pitcher, mostly with the Red Sox and Reds. But he came to us one year and he had probably a 7 foot wingspan, and he would just sit in the middle of the table and he would return every shot that you hit to him, never made an unforced error, never smashed anything, but he just had that consistent return game. You know, we're talking about consistency, so I figured I'd throw that in there.
Nice.
He was the most consistent ping pong player I've ever seen.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. All right, getting back to this. So you mentioned in your final game prep, like this phase, there's probably like 6 or 7 things that maybe you were doing. If you had to pick one thing out of all these things to get yourself ready for the game, which one would you choose? What's the most important one here?
Oh, without a doubt, the mental work. Yeah, just the preparation, watching the highlight reels, the visualization, the rehearsal stuff, writing the affirmations in the journal. If I had one thing to do, literally one thing at all to do, obviously I want my body to be in a good spot. But that mental work became the most important part of my day, became the most important part of my prep work. So if you guys don't have routines yet, whether you're an athlete, a coach, a leader, whatever you guys are doing, take this seriously. You have to train your mind just as much as you train your body.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so the lesson principle here is preparation is going to create the freedom to compete, right? We have to prepare in every single area, physical, mental, even with your relationships, right? We have to prepare in the right way so that you're able to compete when the lights are on. And then just to highlight and reemphasize what you just said, guys, like the mental prep is just as important as the physical prep. I would say at least 95% of the time, athletes, coaches don't really value it. They may, say that it's valuable, say that it's important, but they don't actually do anything about it, right? Take some time to actually prepare yourself mentally, whether it's the visualization, whether it's, we have guided audio tracks on our app, right? Like get your mind right in some way, prepare yourself mentally to take on the challenges to be able to compete when the lights are on. It's not just about the physical prep.
Yeah. Again, that's why we built our 7-pillar app, is to put the tool in everyone's pocket to give no excuses, to make a resource available. Hey, I don't know how to train my mind. What do I do? How do I do visualization work? We did it. We put it in the 7-pillar app. So if you haven't joined us yet,
no excuses.
No excuses. Yeah, no excuses. We got athletes and coaches all across the country, all different sports, mostly baseball, but all different sports are on there training, getting their minds in a good spot and preparing with these digital journals and guided audio tracks and videos and reflection things that are helping them prepare and get their confidence in a good spot for the game. So yeah, next phase, obviously, we talked about everything leading up to the game. The next phase was just the game. We don't have to detail that too much because we're talking about preparation here, but the lesson and principle is if you do all the right stuff beforehand, then like you said, Mike, you can have the freedom and power to go out and compete and be the best version of yourself when the game starts. You have that preparation built. So now you can go out and just do what you've trained yourself to do.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, the second to last phase of your day. So even though the game is ending, right, your work does not end just because the game is over. What I want to ask you now is once the game is over, how does your mindset shift from like competition mode to whatever you got to do next? And then how does that change the routine that you go through? So like if you have a different focus, do you have a different goal? Just walk us through that.
Yeah. So after the game, it was kind of this like reflection period. You're with your teammates in the clubhouse. You're either celebrating a win, you're kind of digesting a loss. You're trying to, feel the emotions, not move on too quickly, but just also not get too attached to the result of what happened out there, knowing that you got another game the next day. So for me, it was time to evaluate. It was time to look at what happened out there and just kind of pull myself out of the emotions of it and become an objective observer. So what I did, and I learned this from a mental performance coach, Brian Kane. I got to work with him for a year, but he had me work on a well, better, how journal. And we've actually built that structure into our training app as well. So again, if you haven't started using the 7-pillar training app, athletes and coaches, get on there. Like you need to start evaluating yourself, learning how to evaluate success at a high level. So after a good game, a bad game, it's important to kind of digest it, to learn from it. And then for me, it was actually really hard to get it out of my mind before I went home. I was constantly thinking about it as I drive home, as I got home with my family, and I just wanted a good way to get it out of my head. So what this Well Better How journal did was it allowed me to first focus on what I did well, not just immediately jump to the strikeout, the error, the loss, but to start with the good stuff, knowing that even in a game where I went 0 for 4 and didn't have a good game, there was still something good inside of there to focus on the process, being a good teammate, having a 9 pitch at bat, like doing something positive for the team. There's still something in there to focus on. So I'd start with writing down in that journal, what did I do well from that game? And it just helped me to focus on, okay, I did do something well. I can build off of this.
Mm-hmm.
The second phase of it was better. What could I have done better during that game today? Hey, I chased 2 sliders in the dirt tonight. I got to make sure, I don't chase any more sliders down. And whatever it is that I felt like I could get better at, there was always something in the course of a major league game to get better at, of course.
Yeah.
But then the last piece was actually the most important, was the how. Not only like what do I need to get better at, but actually how am I going to get better at that? Developing a specific intentional plan to show up the next day and know what I need to work on. So once I would go through that well, better, how, write it in the journal, I'd close the journal, I'd put it in my locker, and then I'd get through the rest of my post-game routine. And then when I show up to the field the next day, that notebook's sitting right there on the counter desk in my locker. And then that's the first thing I do. I show up to the field, I open the notebook, boom, how am I going to get better today? And the plan is already laid out. So that's why that's in our 7-pillar training app. It's an extremely powerful exercise, something that will reset inside the app every day for everybody that's doing that. So some other things post-game, obviously get the mental stuff right, do the well, better, how journal, and then it's go to the training room. It's make sure the body's in a good spot, get some treatment, some dry needling, some, massage work if needed. Go to the training room, do a rollout, foam roll, mobility work, just make sure I'm stretched out. My muscles are feeling good for the next day. And then more times than not, I jump in the cold tub or do a contrast, just making sure that the recovery is jump started for the next day. Sometimes I go to the video room, look through an at-bat, look through a defensive play, kind of do that at a high level before I leave. And then shower up and get some food, high-level nutrition, supplementation again before I shut it down for the night. And then it's okay, head home and get ready for the next day.
Yeah, really good stuff. And I hope all you guys are listening. The one thing that I want to challenge everyone with here is all of these things, especially the mindset stuff. But this is not extra work, right? If you guys want to be great, like this is not extra. This is, I want you guys to start thinking of like, this is quote unquote part of practice, part of your preparation. This is not something extra. So when we think about like preparing yourself, a lot of times we just think again on the field or on the court, physical preparation. But the shift I want you guys to start taking is like, this stuff is not extra. It is actually part of the practice that you guys need to start doing so that you can be the best on a day-to-day basis. Okay. It's not guesswork. It's not extra. This is like, should be baked into the cake to what you guys are doing. And I think a lot of younger athletes, obviously it's not. It wasn't for me for a long time, even as a pro. But I finally got to the point where like, yeah, this is really important. This is part of practice. It's not extra. It's just something that I have to do, and it becomes part of your routine.
Yeah.
So, I'm actually going to double down on this question that I asked before about your pregame prep, but I just think it's relevant and important. So if you had one thing to do out of all of these things, again, you listed 6 or 7 things that you would do post game, what would it be? So the reason why I'm asking this, like say you're a high school or college athlete, like you got 20 or 30 minutes from last pitch or whenever the game ends to when you got to be on the bus. So you may not have as much time as you did as a pro.
Yeah.
If one, maybe 2 things that you would do from this list, like what's a must for you?
100% the Well Better How journal. That was transformational for me.
Okay.
It allowed me to get the game out of my head. It allowed me to put it on paper. It allowed me to create a plan to work on the next day. And then when I showed up the next day, there was no guesswork. There was no searching. There was no, oh man, what am I going to do today? How am I going to get better? It's already written out. The plan was established. So that Well Better How journal is just an absolute non-negotiable for me.
Good. Awesome. All right. So the lesson, the principle here is reflection turn experience into growth. So if we can think about it as like a cycle, okay? So our self-evaluation, our self-reflection turns into self-awareness, which turns into our ability to modify, change our behavior for, practice the next day or whatever it is. And that's going to lead to growth. But it's not a linear move. It's not a one-time thing. This is a cycle that you're doing day in and day out, right? And eventually the cycle moves a little bit farther, a little bit higher in that growth category. So self-evaluation, self-reflection turns into self-awareness, turns into behavior modification, And that's when you're going to see the growth, especially if you stick with these routines and these habits long term.
Yeah, that's a good progression right there. I love seeing that laid out.
Okay, last phase here, phase number 8 of your day, right? So this is where you're going to drive back home. We talk about balance, recovery, talk through that drive, talk through what it looks like for you when you get back home after the game.
Yeah, the drive home was important for me. It was a time to relax, enjoy myself, kind of set the tone for when I got back home, the sleep, the recovery. So it was listening to some music I enjoyed. It was maybe throwing on a podcast, maybe calling a friend who I haven't talked to or a family member in a while. So that drive was really important for me, something to like, I obviously got the Well Better How journal, got the stuff out of my head for the next day. But it was like, okay, now I've been ramped up. My nervous system has been on as I've competed in front of 40,000 people. I have to start to downregulate the nervous system and prepare for the next day. So that drive home was really important. And then once I got home, more times than not, especially as our kids were born and older, Amanda and the kids would be asleep. But when they were awake, I tried to maximize that time, whether it was a day game or, they just happened to come to the game and be up. Try to maximize that time with them, spend quality time with my kids, put them to bed at night. If it was a day game, have a dinner with my family with no phone out and just really be present with the family and enjoy that quality time with them. And as I did that, it just became more and more important to me and just showed me the value that like good, healthy relationships off the field allow me to compete better once I step on the field because I'm filled up. My cup is full. I'm ready to go out and enjoy myself once I do step on the field.
Yeah. So for thinking, for me, one of the hardest things too, like having a really bad game, especially like a week where I'm not playing good, I'm in a slump or whatever it is, like just things aren't going my way. You touched on about this a little bit and being able to close the book with the Well Better How journal, but just say you're in a stretch where like nothing's going right, just like kind of in your head. And what do you think is the best way or that you did, but speak to the high school, college athlete and coach here. Like what's the best way when you're going through something like that, where you can flip the switch and really just be more present when you get home and not kind of take those things home with you?
Yeah, I think perspective is the first thing that comes to mind, knowing that the performance and the results of the competition don't define you. So one intentional practice that I did coming home after a lot of night games, I'd park the truck in the driveway. I'd get out of the truck, and before I'd even walk into the home, I'd spend some time in the driveway. I'd look up, and more times than not, Arizona, clear sky, you can see the stars great. So I'd enjoy just looking up at the stars, spend some time in prayer, just understand that, I'm small. Like in the course in scope of the entire world and universe, I am tiny. And what I did on the baseball field tonight doesn't really matter all that much. Like it matters, it's important, but just to remind myself of this perspective of the God who made the entire universe. He knows me, he sees me, he loves me, he's always with me. And that perspective shift was always great before I walked into the house. So that was number one. And then number two was just finding something you enjoy outside the field. As you know, Mike, I was kind of obsessive with my personality and very detailed in all my work, but I had to be intentional and proactive to find things I enjoyed outside of the field. And I wouldn't just become, work obsessed 24/7. So for me, it was spending time with family. It was cooking and enjoying great food. It was just stuff like that I could enjoy away from the field.
Great advice. To wrap this section up, right, the lesson and principle here is you can't perform at your best if your entire life is out of balance. Let me say that again. You can't perform at your best if your entire life is out of balance. Nick, you touched on this. I mean, for everybody listening, you're so much more than an athlete. You're so much more than a coach. Performances matter. Results matter. We're going to say this 1,000,001 times, right? Like we're not chasing those results. We're chasing the process. We're chasing becoming the type of person who is capable of getting good results. And it speaks to being a whole person. I would talk about a holistic approach. We have to find, this is something that I wasn't good at. I think I spoke to this on an earlier podcast, but like, again, I was baseball only for a long time. I didn't really have any interest or know my interests outside of the sport, which was not, in the long run, not a great thing for me. So again, a challenge for everybody listening here is like, make sure that you are balancing your sport, your coaching with things outside of your sport, and you're just building yourself up as a complete person. So we went through a lot there, bro. We went through a lot. It was 8 phases of a day, walking through your typical day as a big leaguer. But this is really this is what dedication, this is what commitment looks like in your sport. At its most basic level, it's just how you become excellent, right?
Yep. So, I mean, the overall theme that greatness is built by discipline and intentional preparation, right? We can't luck our way into it. We can't wish or hope our way into it. We have to have discipline and intentional preparation if we want to be great at baseball, at leadership, at coaching, at anything in life. So, number one, we have to develop great habits and routines. Number two, there's always something you can do to get better. Number three, we want to practice with a purpose. And number four, we want to train our mind just as much as our body. We obviously talked about that, with the pregame and postgame stuff, but just take it to heart, guys. Know that your mental preparation is probably behind your physical and you got to step it up, right? If you want to be great, you have to train your mind at a high level. So this is what 7 Pillars is about. It's not about just training the athlete. It's about training the person behind the performance so that you can become a type of person who can withstand obstacles and adversity and show up with the most consistency possible every day.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the last thing I want to say here, but to the high school, college athlete, I really want you guys to take stock of everything that we just went through, Nick's daily routine. So my experience as a coach, working with guys, I would say for 90%, 99% of the guys out there, if you think you're working hard, you're really probably not, right? That's a challenge for you. I want to pull you up, bring you up. It's not me to put you down, but like just speaking reality to you. Obviously you're probably not a professional yet, or you might not be a professional yet, but take all this information to heart, understand what it's going to take to become great or the best version of yourself. Okay. We didn't talk too much about it yet on this podcast, but for me, just thinking about those 8 phases, like the word sacrifice comes to mind. So if we want to be truly great in any area of life, it's going to come at a cost. Right? It's going to come at us sacrificing something else that we could be pursuing. So you can ask yourself and be honest, right? Look at yourself in the mirror and say, what do you want to be great at? Are you working hard enough in that area to become great, to make that vision a reality? And if you're not, attack the mental part of the game, attack the physical part of the game, do everything that you need to do, and then go one step above that, right? So just trying to draw that complete picture. Again, this is what it looked like for you as a professional, as one of the best in the game. But if you're not quite there yet, start to understand what it really takes to pursue excellence and just to be great.
Yeah, that's good. And as we wrap up, again, you guys don't have to do exactly what I did, but the challenge here is simple. It's to become better at what you do and find better ways to prepare and just constantly refine what you do at a high level. So again, we wrap up every podcast with a challenge or 7-pillar challenge of the week. We don't want to just hear a podcast. We don't want to just listen to a book or, something you listen to just can't be words in your head. It has to become action in your life. So we want to be doers of the word and we want to take it to heart. So our challenge for all of you this week is a Well Better How journal. We want to make sure that you learn how to evaluate yourself properly after competition. Whether you're an athlete, a coach, it's really, really important that you become a good self-evaluator, that you focus first on what you did well. Second, you know what you can do better, and then formulating a plan, the how behind to get better each and every day. So inside our 7-pillar app, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't become a member, it's very affordable, but we're going to throw in a discount for you guys as well here. So go into our website. You can find it on social media. It's very easy for you guys to find, app.7pillar.co. And we'll give you a discount code right here, podcast10. If you put that in at checkout, we'll give you 10% off your first year. So Well Better How journal, guys. Learn how to become a great self-evaluator. And if this podcast spoke to you, if it's challenged you, if it's helped you in any way, please share it. Please subscribe. Please just review our podcast. The more you guys do that, the more of this work that we're doing is going to reach athletes and coaches and leaders who need it.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. If this episode brought you value, please share it with someone in your circle who needs to hear this message. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode, and don't forget to leave a rating and review. Every share, follow, and review helps us reach more people and make a greater impact. Because at the end of the day, this is about more than content. It's about growth, purpose, and stepping fully into who you were created to be.